The first meeting is really a get-to-know-you meeting. We're going to sit down. Typically, the meeting will last about an hour. We're having a conversation. My job is to ask them some questions about where they are, what some of their goals are, what some of the key objectives they have in meeting with me, where they are to this point, and really what brought them in to see me. And now I'm at the point in my career where I have a lot of people that are dependent upon me to provide them with all the guidance and all the advice that we do on a day-to-day basis.
You spend your working years trying to build up your assets, trying to build up pension credits at your job, trying to grow your nest egg so that you can one day retire when you can't work or don't want to work anymore. And that's a period followed by phase two, which is retirement. And your priorities in these two phases are very different, but many times we see people don't make that shift and they still act like they're in phase one when they really should be acting like they're in phase two.
We're going to talk to you about what we commonly refer to as the second half of the game. And what I mean by that is you're working your entire life towards retirement, and I'm assuming that most of you are, at that age where you're starting to consider some of your options as you move into retirement. And as you do that, you're moving from what we call the accumulation phase of your life, where you're accumulating your assets. Maybe you're participating in your company's 401k, maybe you're contributing to an IRA account or a Roth IRA account or some type of retirement vehicle. And now, as you retire, you're transitioning into the distribution phase, or the part where you're going to need income in retirement. So we're going to talk about some different ways to do that with an emphasis on Social Security.
Welcome to Financially Speaking with Jeff Bush. My name is Steve Jablonski, and I'll be the host of today's show. The topic of today's show is taxes, because we are in the middle of tax season, and it's really a good time to review some of our tax strategies with our viewers.
Yeah. Well, hello, Steve. Welcome to the show. It's great to be here on PCTV. We're grateful to have this presence, not only here in the Pottstown area, but also via the World Wide Web on the PCTV network and their website, thepctvnetwork.com, and also our website, informedfamily.com. So a little bit about how all that works. So when we're being shown on the cable, the local cable here in Pottstown, the show's also live streamed on the PCTV Network website, which again is thepctvnetwork.com. So it's pretty cool, which is one of the reasons why we started to do this in the first place about 3.5 years ago. We thought we could get our message out to a very broad audience. And then also, you can look at all of our previous shows on the PCTV Network website and also our website. So anyway, with all that being said, a big thank you to our friends here at PCTV.
Well, Jeff, why don't we start with diversification? And if we define diversification, what is that really about? How do you define it?
Well, Steve, it's really a risk management technique that mixes a wide variety of investments within a portfolio. And of course, you do a lot of the risk management in our firm. But the rationale behind this technique contends that a portfolio of different kinds of investments will, on average, yield higher returns and pose a lower risk than any individual investment found within that portfolio.
Okay. And how does that relate to taxes, Jeff?
Well, in addition to diversification of assets, you also need diversification within your tax classes. In other words, you have taxable accounts such as money markets and mutual funds, dividends on stocks, CDs, bonds, and immediate annuities. But we also have a lot of different investments that have different types of tax features that are associated with them.
Okay. And as far as that, some grow tax deferred, some are taxable, some come out with no taxes.
Yeah.
Can you give me some
so
examples?
it's really there's really a lot to this, and when you really explore the different vehicles that you have, there's really a lot. So I'll try to categorize them for us here today. So when you look at investments, you look at them when you're living and at death.
Okay.
And then the other way you look at it is, do you pay taxes now? Do you pay taxes later, meaning is it a deferred vehicle?
Okay.
Or do you pay taxes never? Okay, there
Okay.
are some things where you never pay taxes. So we should really spend a little bit of time breaking that down. So if you look at just in the purest form, what kind of investments do you have right now that you're going to pay taxes on right now? So in that category, you have things like a savings account. So you might not pay many taxes because the interest rates are so low still. So savings accounts and money markets, and then you have mutual funds that may be paying dividends.
Okay.
So a lot of people, that's how they invest. They have mutual funds, and a lot of these mutual fund companies pay dividends, whether it's a stock mutual fund or a bond or some kind of a balance fund. They're paying a dividend, and that dividend is taxable. So at the end of the year, you get a 1099, you report it on your tax return. Then you have CDs.
Yep.
There's interest on CDs. Even though that interest stays within the CD, maybe, you're still liable for the tax on that. Certain bonds, okay, so if you take like a corporate bond,
Okay.
for example, that's going to pay there's a coupon on there or interest, and that interest is going to be taxable. Okay, and then stocks,
Yep.
those things are taxable.
Now, those, when you talk about the investments that are taxable now, how is that taxed? What type of rate? Like
It's usually taxed at ordinary income rates.
Okay.
So whatever tax bracket you're in,
okay.
it's the way I like to explain it is it's going to lay right on top of your highest tax bracket.
Okay.
So if your highest tax bracket is 25%, and then you have to add in dividends from your mutual
Okay.
funds, that's all going to be taxed at that highest rate, at 25%.
And how about if the average investor has a mutual fund, they hold it for 3 or 4 years, 10 years, and then they sell that? How's that?
Yeah, that's taxed a little bit differently. Okay. So that's capital gains.
Okay.
So the way capital gains work a little bit differently. So they're paid. They're going to, and as long as you hold that asset for a year, when you go to sell it, there's going to be a capital gain calculation.
Okay.
So they're going to determine what the gain was or the loss. So it's kind of good news, bad news. So if you sell it at a loss, that's bad. But the good news is you get to write off the loss.
Okay.
The bad news is you can only write off $3,000 a year.
Okay.
The good news is you can carry over losses into future tax years. So it's kind of a different animal when it comes to the capital gains.
And if we look at an employer plan, a 401k or a 403b, how is that taxed?
Yeah, so by the way, we love the 401k. The 401k is, in my estimation, by far the best way to save for retirement. So if you're a worker and your employer offers a 401k plan, you got to take advantage of it. The tax features on the 401k are pretty cool. You get to defer the tax on that until you have to take your money out. So if you're a 30-year-old worker, let's say you're going to work another 30 years.
Yep.
you keep putting your money into a 401k. Let's say you defer, 6% of your income. Maybe your employer has some kind of a matching program. Maybe they match half of that,
Yep.
so maybe they match 3%. Well, now all of a sudden you're looking at 9% of your income is being going into this 401k plan. And with respect to taxes, that amount that's being withheld from your paycheck, that's also reducing your tax liability.
Okay.
So the 401k, you're building up a great big tax deferred account. So you're deferring your taxes, you're saving money on taxes while you're in deferral,
Okay.
and then of course you pay your taxes eventually when you take the money out of the 401k.
And when someone leaves their company, do they have to take it all out? How does that? What are their choices?
When you leave an employer and you have a 401k or a fourth, I'm going to use the term 401k to generically
Okay.
mean 403b or 457 or whatever type of plan that you have.
Yep.
When you leave, you generally have you have three choices.
Okay.
Let's say you can keep the money where it is,
Yep.
so you can be working for company B and still keep your 401k with the original company A. Most people don't like to do that because they leave and they're moving on. Maybe they didn't leave under the best circumstances, or even if they did, they want to move that. So you can move it to the 401k with the new company,
Okay.
or you can roll it over into an IRA. Now, all those things preserve the tax deferred status.
Okay.
So it's tax deferred in the 401k. It's going to remain tax deferred in the new account, the IRA, or the new plan. Now, here's where people get into trouble, and that is when they leave the company, they simply take the 401k and they cash it out.
Yep.
So maybe you saved $50,000 in your 401k, and you just take a distribution and you pay tax on it. That's big, because that $50,000 distribution now, it's a taxable distribution. Again, it lays on top of all the other income that you have, and you're gonna pay tax on that. If you're under 59 and a half, in addition to paying a tax, you're also going to pay a 10% penalty.
Wow.
So there's really a incentive to keep the money in a tax deferred status.
And it doesn't seem like the government's getting their money, their taxes. So when you take the tax deduction and you don't spend your IRA, when does the government get their taxes?
They'll get it.
Okay.
They'll get it eventually. It's the world of tax deferral.
Okay.
So you can defer money from a retirement account all the way until age 70 and 1/2.
Okay.
So a long time. Once you reach the age of 70 and a half, you have to start taking money out of your account. It's called a required minimum distribution, or an RMD. You're going to have to pay tax on that RMD. So you're going to have to do that the rest of your life. And then upon your death, whoever inherits that will also have to pay the tax. So let's say you die and the money goes to your spouse. The spouse then inherits that as an IRA. It's called a Spousal Ira Rollover. Okay, so now your spouse is paying tax on the IRA. And then maybe the spouse dies and it's going to go to the children. Well, when the children inherit the IRA, that's called an inherited IRA, and they're going to have to pay taxes on it over their lifetime.
Yep.
So you can defer taxes on an IRA or a 401k for a very, very long time, basically over 2 lifetimes. Okay? But eventually, it's kind of like kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
Eventually, you're going to pay taxes on this account.
And what's that look like if it goes to a non-family member?
If it goes to a non-family member, it's really the same thing.
Okay.
As long as that's a good question, because Spouses are treated differently than non-spouses. So when it goes to a spouse, it's just as if it was the spouse's IRA.
Okay.
So Steve, if you die before your wife and she's the beneficiary of your IRA, which I know she is,
Yep.
she's going to, it'll be her IRA. Okay. And now she'll take distributions based on her own schedule.
Okay.
Okay. But now let's look beyond that. So you have 3 children. So when both of you are gone, it's going to go to your 3 children. Now, your 3 children, they're treated in the eyes of the IRS, they're non-spouses.
Yep.
So they'll get it in a non-spouse account, and they'll have to take their minimum distributions. They could still defer the vast majority of it,
Yep.
and pay taxes on just that minimum distribution, but they'll pay taxes over their lifetime.
Yep.
So your children. So that's why we say we can do it over another generation.
Yep.
So if it's a non-family member, it's really the same rules apply. So let's say you decided to, instead of leaving this money to your 3 children, you wanted to leave it to nieces and nephews, it would be the same thing. They would be able to defer that over their lifetime.
Okay.
But here's another pitfall. Here's another tax pitfall where people get into trouble when they don't name their children as the contingent beneficiary.
Okay.
Okay? I was just sitting in my office last week with a guy where I said, "Who's the contingent beneficiary on your retirement account?" And he kind of scratched his head and said, "You know what? I really don't know. It's 2 kids. We set up a new IRA account for him in our office, but he still had a retirement account where he was working." Yep. And he honestly didn't know, so he's going back to check that. Now, where you get into trouble is if you don't name the children as the what we call a contingent beneficiary. Yep. Then it goes into your estate. It goes into probate, and the issue with that is then it becomes the taxes become due and payable immediately.
Immediately. Correct. Now, are there any vehicles that you don't have to pay taxes on the way out?
Yes,
Okay.
there are. So we have the Roth IRA, which
Okay.
was a great invention, which is now 20 years old, believe it or not. The Roth IRA is all tax-free money.
Okay.
So the rationale behind that is you're not getting any tax break going in. Okay, so you don't get that big tax break when you make the contribution to the Roth IRA. But the trade-off there is those dollars grow tax-free throughout the course of your lifetime. So, and again, the same rules apply as in the IRA, and that is it goes to your spouse, and it goes to your spouse tax-free. Yep. And then, again, with your children, it goes to your children tax-free over their lifetime. They just have to take out a small minimum distribution from their account, and you're looking at tax-free growth over 2 lifetimes. It's a huge benefit. Roth IRAs. So we get a lot of calls this time of year because you can contribute to a Roth IRA. You have up until to the tax deadline, which is normally April the 15th. This year it's April the 18th because of the weekend and the holiday. But you have until the tax deadline to make a contribution. Yep. For a Roth IRA.
And you mentioned with the traditional IRA at 70.5, you have to take money out. How about the Roth?
With a Roth IRA, there is no required minimum distribution to you during your lifetime. So you can defer distribution on that for your entire life, and so can your spouse. So we've found that this is a good technique, a good vehicle for estate planning, because if you have what I'll call, we usually look at assets. There's 2 piles of money. There's live on money, and there's leave on money. So there's a pile of money that you have to live on, so to fund your current income needs. And then there's leave-on money. Oh, that's money we're never going to spend. That's going to go to the kids. That's going to go to the grandchildren. Or that's going to go to a charity. Yep. Well, if that's the case, if you're never going to spend it and it's going to go to your kids, maybe it makes sense to put it into a Roth IRA. And you can convert traditional IRAs to Roth IRAs. Okay. And all you're doing there, Steve, is you're pulling future tax liability into the present day and paying taxes on it.
And what are the advantages of a Roth if someone needs to draw income while they're living versus the regular IRA?
Well, it's tax-free.
Okay.
So you just have to follow a couple of rules. Number one, you have to be over 59 and a half, and the money has to be in the Roth IRA for 5 years. Once you've met that criteria, you can pull money out of the Roth IRA tax-free. So we have strategies that we've put into play for our clients where they mix traditional IRA money, Roth IRA money, and we're still able to keep them under the Social Security threshold, which is something else that we have to consider with taxes. We spend a lot of time, you and I, Steve, talking about Social Security with our clients. In fact, we take our show on the road. In fact, this might be a good time for a little commercial for our upcoming seminar. We're going to be taking our show on the road in the next couple of weeks. So we have them up on the screen there. We're going to be locally and here in Pottstown, and we're going to be down in Audubon, which is only a couple miles down the road here on 422. And call our office for tickets if you're interested in coming to one of our live events. Both of those events, we're going to be focusing on income planning in general, and we'll touch on taxes, but it's basically a discussion about Social Security. But getting back to your question about planning, is with regards to Social Security income, it's going to be taxable. Your benefit's going to be taxable if you have income over $32,000 if you're a married couple. Okay. If you're single, I think the number is like 24,000, 24 or 25,000. It doesn't take much to get to $32,000. I mean, it really doesn't. Yeah. But if you have a Roth IRA that you're sitting on, that's tax-free income. So that doesn't affect that calculation on Social Security. So what we've found, if you can maybe mix a little Roth, maybe mix a little traditional IRA in there along with your Social Security, you can keep your effective tax rate pretty low when you're in retirement.
Okay. And Jeff, one thing we haven't talked about is how does an annuity fit into this tax picture? Yeah,
it's amazing. We've gotten this far into it, and we haven't even talked about annuities yet. But annuities are a great vehicle for tax management. So if you have an immediate annuity simply means you're getting an immediate payout. Okay? And when you get that immediate payout, you're only paying tax on the interest portion of that payout. So it's really a return of principal and interest, and now we're in a very low interest rate environment. So we've seen payouts that are like 95% tax-free. So you want to call our office if you want more information on these immediate annuities, because they're kind of all over the place as far as how they're treated from a tax perspective. But we like the immediate annuity as far as, because we talked earlier about all these taxable accounts. We talked about stocks and bonds and mutual funds. And if that's sitting in a non-IRA account, that's all going to be taxable income. Yep. So if you have the immediate annuity, so let's say you have some cash that you're available to buy, an immediate annuity, or maybe you have some other vehicles that you're ready to cash in. If you buy an immediate annuity and take a payout on that to help fund the income need that you have now in retirement,
Yep.
a large portion of that payout is going to be tax free.
Yep.
Okay, so you compare that to, maybe the bond that you have, or maybe the dividend paying stock, you can really save a lot of money on taxes.
Yep. And how about money that you don't need, the leave money?
The leave on money.
The leave on money.
Yeah, so we've talked about the Roth IRA, but what we are big proponents of life insurance here in our practice as well, because life insurance is a wonderful vehicle for estate planning, because when you leave that to your family or to your charity or whomever, that's all tax-free. So it's a tax-free benefit.
Okay.
So if you have money that hey, I'm never gonna spend that. That's money for my kids. That's money for my grandchildren. That's really all about them. So this is financial planning at its finest. You look at money that you're not going to spend, or you reasonably don't think that you're going to spend it, then maybe it makes sense to create another pile of money, or a bucket, or however you want to describe it, but you're creating a tax-free asset to be distributed upon your death.
Okay. And we're coming upon time here. Anything you want to add in here before we wrap up?
Yeah, so we didn't talk too much about the deferred annuities. We talked a little bit about immediate annuities, but we have deferred annuities as well. So what deferred annuities are is, so let's say you have an asset, you want to buy a deferred annuity. What do we mean by deferral? You're deferring taxes.
Okay.
So you could have, and there's all kinds of different vehicles. There's fixed rate annuities, there's index annuities, there's variable annuities, beyond the scope of what we really want to talk about today. But suffices to say that all of that is tax deferred.
Okay.
So, if you've got some money that you're gonna, that you just don't want to pay taxes on, you want to manage your taxes, you want to manage the taxes you're paying on your Social Security, an annuity could be a good vehicle for that. So we are wrapping up. Boy, this time really flew by here today, Steve, for this show. So if you need more information, you can email us or call us. We can give you more information on some of the tax strategies that we use with our company. And beyond that, Steve, this was a good show here today talking about taxes, and we're going to sign off. This is Financially Speaking with Jeff Bush.